Hey there, Mama. You're listening to the Lift the Shame podcast. I'm your host, Crystal, mama of 5 and your family's intuitive eating dietitian, here to help you cut through the diet culture clutter so you can enjoy freedom with food as a family. I'm on a mission to help you end the generational legacy of diet culture in your home so you can experience motherhood free from food guilt and body shame. Listen in weekly for guidance on how you can ditch diet culture, heal your relationship with food and your body, and confidently raise intuitive eaters. Let's dive in and lift the shame together. Welcome back to the show, Mama. Today actually happens to be Thanksgiving here in the US. So happy Thanksgiving. I'm so grateful that you're choosing to spend some of your holiday with me today if you're tuning in. And even if you're tuning in post Thanksgiving, I hope that this episode can just be of some support and encouragement to you if you find yourself just feeling overwhelmed by the holidays or just family gatherings or holiday meals or any type of day that centers and focals food as the center point. I know that can bring up a lot. I know that holidays can be fraught with so many mixed emotions, especially if we are spending time with our family of origin and all that can bring up. You know, it brings up a lot from our past, our childhood. We can be potentially engaging with individuals who are triggering in different ways. And so I just want to bring you some encouragement today. Last week's episode, we talked a little bit about kids and just some of the expectations around kids and holiday meals. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to that episode, make sure you tune in to that one as well. And whether you are popping in your earbuds as you prepare your family's meal, or if you're traveling somewhere and listening to this on your way, again, I just want to give you some gentle encouragement for today. And, again, just create some space around all the different mixed emotions that can come with holidays, especially as it pertains to food. And I want to give you 5 tips or just 5 things to think about as you are navigating holidays for yourself in particular. And, it's always challenging to not just be thinking about yourself, but also be trying to help your kids and co-regulate with your children and support them and help them manage, different emotions that may be coming up for them. And I know that this expression may feel worn out, but this idea of, not being able to pour out from an empty cup, or really just wanting you to think about how you feel and how you move through these days and through these experiences really does matter. And it is important for you to create space for yourself and for the different experiences or emotions that may be coming up for you today, because ultimately we can't really be there for our kids or co-regulate with them if we're not able to manage our own distress or our own discomfort that may be coming up. And just know that you are worth it. You are deserving of it. And learning to attune to yourself and to your body and to your needs, it's all important and it all matters. And I know so many of us have grown up learning to push our needs aside in order to attend to other people or to make other people feel more comfortable around us. And so I just want to invite you into this space where you can think about some things and hopefully just have some encouragement and some tips to help you hold space for yourself today, because I know these days can be heavy. And they can be bittersweet. I think as parents, when we are raising our children and we are thinking about different traditions and different things that we want to experience with our kids, that is one of the beautiful aspects of holiday seasons. I also think that can come with a lot of heavy expectations and a lot of pressure, feeling like I have to do all the things and I need to create all these memories. And then again, of course, like being around other people or family members or friends. And so many of us are engaging with relatives who are so entrenched in diet culture. And that can be really painful for us as, we try to separate ourselves from those things. And so all of that may be coming up for you today. And again, I want you to remember that one of the greatest gifts that you really can give your child is holding space for yourself and being able to be present with them. And again, I think that strips away all the all the extras that we feel like we have to do. I have to create this perfect meal, or I have to create this perfect environment, or all the games and the crafts. And yeah, those things are nice. But if you are feeling frantic and stressed and in distress as you try to go about doing those things, or force yourself to do things that you just may not have the capacity for, your child is going to pick up on that energy and the things that you're feeling and experiencing. And so I just want to, again, encourage you and invite you to the space of being present for yourself and ultimately for your children too. I've shared a little bits and pieces of my story over the different episodes on the podcast so far. And one day I will share a little bit more in detail. But, I did struggle with a severe eating disorder in my late teens, early 20s. And there were so many holidays that I don't have good memories of, or just, are clouded with my eating disorder and eating disorder behaviors. And whether you yourself are struggling in that same space and you find that your eating disorder feels all-consuming and it is, making it challenging for you to engage with your children or to be present with them or to enjoy any aspects of holidays. I hear you and I see you and I understand what that feels like. And, again, I also just want to acknowledge that really our relationships with food are so individualized and also occur on a spectrum, like you might really be struggling and whatever your struggles are, they are valid. Again, I think it's easy for us to compare what we're going through with other people. And no matter what your struggle is, it is valid. And it's important for you to attend to yourself in ways that can help you move through that struggle, or to connect with other people, or to ask for extra help and support. And I know those things can be challenging. And, and it sometimes feels like holidays can bring those things right to the surface. And if you find yourself just in this place of feeling like I don't even know what to do for myself today, I just want you to know that I see you and I understand those struggles. And I just want to encourage you also to be compassionate with yourself as you navigate these days, whether you're super excited about it or you're just like trying to survive. Wherever you are on that spectrum, whatever you're feeling is okay. And you don't have to try to change how you're feeling or where you're at in order to, try to do things differently with your kids. Again, I think acknowledging where you're at, creating compassion for yourself about whatever aspects of today may be challenging is important. And we don't want to perpetuate shame by hiding the way we feel or trying to sweep things under the rug, or, I think oftentimes we try to kind of shame ourselves out of how we're feeling. Like, you shouldn't be feeling that way. Why are you feeling like this? It should be a joyful day. You should be able to do X, Y, and Z for the kids. And those things can just make it harder for you to move through whatever you're experiencing today. And so I want to invite you to, again, just check in with yourself and ask yourself, how am I feeling? What's coming up for me today? Am I just going through the motions? Am I engaging in a narrative that's very harmful and shameful to me? Because again, those things will just perpetuate this cycle of shame, which can just add to the fire, right? Like if you're struggling with an eating disorder or disordered eating behaviors and you find those things ramping up today, we don't want to further yourself into those things by escalating the shame that you may be feeling around that. So that's kind of a preface into these points of encouragement that I want to give you. And again, I want to move through just 5 practical tips to help you as you're navigating this holiday season, and especially today on days like Thanksgiving, right? It's one holiday out of the year. However, it's very centered and focused on food. And I know that can be really challenging, especially if you are healing your relationship with food or learning to make peace with your body. when these holidays come up and food is the focal point, that can feel very distressing. And I want you to think about what is important to you, what matters to you, and reminding you to come back to yourself, to your body, to your values, to the things that matter most to you, so that food doesn't take that away from you. Food doesn't have to be the focal point. It doesn't have to be the center of everything that you're doing. And so I think, even as we move into this discussion, I just want you to think about what matters to you and what do you want to remember from this day, years from now. And that's something that I think really helps me when I get stuck in, the spiral of, I got to do this, I got to do that. What do you want to remember? What do you want your kids to remember? And asking those questions can help you come back to the things that you really value most and allow you to live through that lens versus it's about the food, it's about what I'm eating, it's about this conversation, again, and taking those things away and coming back to what matters most to you. So if you're struggling and if you find yourself in this position of overwhelming emotions about today, about all that today can represent and bring up for you, I want you to keep these 5 points in mind. So tip number 1 here is just examining your self-talk. What is the narrative that you're spinning in your mind? What are the things that you're frequently telling yourself about today or about yourself or just about food in general? Like, what are the thoughts that you find yourself continually engaging in? And this can be a harder question to examine, but something that I do think is important. I've read some studies that have shown that 80 to 90% of our daily thoughts are repetitive and automatic, meaning we tend to recycle the things that we are constantly thinking, and they're not new, right? Like the things that are spinning in our mind are likely things that are recycling and repeating from days before or months before. And, that narrative really does come from somewhere. It's not like you're just imagining these things. And, when we think about some of the thoughts that we have around food and our body that can be really shaming or isolating or critical, those things do tend to stem from painful parts of our lives and our past. And it's not necessarily that you can change those things overnight, but I just want you to be aware of what you're thinking about and the things that are consuming your mental energy. And this is where it can be helpful to just remind yourself of some of the core things that you want to hold on to when it comes to your values and what matters most to you. For example, I think a lot of these negative thoughts that can be repetitive and cycle in our minds, can revolve around food or our bodies. Like, I'm not strong enough. I'm not good enough. I'm worthless. I'm unlovable. What do I have to offer? And, those can really tailspin into very deep shaming cycles. And I want you to just think about, again, some thoughts that can help you move through some of those shaming cycles if you find yourself entrenched in those negative thoughts. So it could be something like, I'm learning to listen to my body. I'm learning to take care of my body. I'm learning to be present for my children. And these, I think going for more neutral phrases that you're working towards believing about yourself can be helpful versus, sometimes I think we have ideas of what I should be thinking about myself. I should love my body. I should be able to eat intuitively, whatever that looks like. And I think just telling yourself I'm learning to do these things can feel a lot more realistic and a lot more accepting. And so I just want to encourage you to stand on some of those truths that you are learning. You are learning to take care of yourself. You're learning to be present for your children. You're learning how to model a neutral and peaceful relationship to your children. And that is a process, and being compassionate and gentle with yourself through that process can be super helpful. And again, examining what are the repetitive thoughts around food and your body that are coming up. And do you find yourself just taking those things at face value, or is there any type of awareness around the things that are regularly coming up for you in your mind? Because sometimes we just, it's like a tape player. We just, tape players. I don't even know if those things exist anymore. But when I was growing up, we had cassette players. Hopefully some of you can relate to that. And, I remember we would put a favorite tape in and it would just play and we would just listen to it and it became so automatic. And I think so often our thoughts are like that too. We just have this old school cassette player in our head that's playing this narrative about food, about ourselves, about our body. And we just listen to it without actually examining, is this true? Is this what I want to believe? Is this helping me move through my life in a more compassionate way? And sometimes those narratives are louder on days that can be more triggering or days where we feel more vulnerable, like when we are spending time with our family of origin. And so I just want you to examine some of the things that are coming up for you thought-wise and ask yourself, what is important to you that you can hold on to help you disrupt those narratives. And I do find that having like a visual reminder of the things that are important to you, the things that you're learning to embrace about yourself and your family can be really helpful for that. Sometimes that might look like a picture of your kids, or it could be a favorite quote or a statement, an affirmation, like I'm learning to take care of my body. I'm learning to listen to my body, something like that you can put somewhere to just help disrupt the narrative that we so often recycle and just accept at face value. Because it's really hard to move through your day and make conscious choices to do those things that are helping you if you are just entrenched and stuck in this shaming narrative that may be going on in your head. So that is my first tip of encouragement for you today. Second tip here is kind of more tangible, and that is just feeding yourself regularly and giving yourself permission to eat today, whatever that might look like. There's a lot here, and I wish we had more time to kind of move through this in more detail. And, we'll maybe do some future episodes on this topic in particular, but there's so much disordered eating that's happening around us that it really reinforces those behaviors as normal when they're actually not normal and can often actually be more detrimental and harmful to us. So for example, it's not uncommon to hear people saying, well, we're going to have a big meal for dinner, so I'm just not going to eat all day. I'm going to save all my calories for tonight. And if you've struggled with disordered eating or an eating disorder, you will know that recipe is not helpful. And in fact, it can be a recipe for disaster. And it can make food so much more chaotic when we approach eating in that way. There's also I know for so many people on these food-centered holidays, there's just a lot of internal conflict around what can I eat? What can I not eat? And if you're trying to break through some of those old food rules or food habits, I know for a lot of moms that I've worked with that because of those years spent with dieting and diet culture, there's just this old narrative of counting calories or counting points. And it's like your brain can't stop from doing it. It's just automatic. And so that can feel really loud and come up a lot during these holidays. And I just want you to think about, tuning into what your body is needing, but really asking yourself this question of what sounds good to me? What would actually feel satisfying to me versus these questions that come from a more restrained place of eating where we often are thinking about okay, what's the least amount that I could eat today? Or, how can I skirt off this amount of food? Or, however you're framing that question, I really want to encourage you to think about it from this lens of what would feel nourishing and satisfying for me today. Because so often we're restraining ourselves from eating what our bodies truly need to feel satisfied. And a lot of us don't even really know what satisfaction feels like in our body. And this is something that you can take not just for today, but for all future eating times. What actually would feel nourishing and satisfying to you today? And I know that we can't always create that in every single eating opportunity that we have, but instead of, trying to avoid eating certain things or not allowing yourself to eat certain things, I really want you to explore and get curious about what would feel good, what would taste good, what are some dishes that you've been excited or looking forward to seeing, and really shifting out of this place of fear to, again, like attunement with your body and aligning with your body and permission to let yourself eat the things that sound good, that look good, that you've been wanting. Permission is such a powerful antidote to these vicious eating disorder cycles or disordered eating cycles. When we give ourselves full permission, it really does allow us to enjoy an eating experience. And when our kids can see that, that is such a powerful message for them to observe as well. Like, food is meant to be enjoyed. It is meant to be something that, we find pleasure in. And for so many of us who have had this tumultuous relationship with food in the past, we can really lose sight of what that even looks like or what that is. And so, I want you to think about that today. I also really want to encourage you to feed yourself regularly. I can't emphasize how important that is to just helping your body trust and know that you are nourishing it and giving your body what it needs on a consistent basis. So often what happens when we postpone our eating, or we push and ignore our body's hunger cues, and we try to reserve for a bigger meal at the end of the day, we're ignoring what our body needs. And fundamentally, our body requires food and nourishment regularly. And for a lot of us, that might look like every 2 to 3 hours. And I know that can feel like, whoa, that feels like way too much. And again, we can unpack this idea more in future episodes, but you do not have to save up for your calories. You do not have to wait until a certain time to feed yourself. It's important to nourish yourself regularly. And, postponing your eating or not allowing yourself to eat until later, that often can create a more binge type of eating, and we see this with our kids too. It's like when we don't allow them to eat certain things, like when access to those things are finally made available, there's often a sense of like overeating and binge eating that happens. And I don't want you to feel like you're stuck in that cycle either. And part of that happens as a rebound. Like our body is trying to compensate for not having enough food earlier in the day. And our bodies are so smart. They want to make sure that we're getting enough to fuel our body's needs physically. And so if you're not getting enough and adequate nourishment during the earlier part of the day, it may be more challenging for you to attune to what your body's needing in the later part of the day when you are eating, because you may be ravenous at that point. And I do want to clarify as well that there is nothing wrong with overeating occasionally. Sometimes we overeat because a meal just tastes really good and we're really enjoying it. And we find ourselves eating kind of past that point of satisfaction. And having that experience on the occasion is okay. That's part of normal eating. And we want to think about the data and the information that we're gathering from all of these different eating experiences that we're having to help inform us for future eating experiences as well. So I just want to encourage you to go gently with yourself and, really be intentional about feeding yourself regularly. I know that can be hard, especially when you're managing kiddos and maybe you're doing the cooking today or you're traveling, whatever that looks like. I know it can be challenging. And we've been so accustomed and used to putting our needs on the back burner. And feeding yourself is the most valid form of self-care, honestly. And it's a fundamental need. You deserve it. You do not have to earn your food. You need to eat and nourish yourself. And so I want to encourage you to take some time to make that happen for yourself, and sometimes this can happen more easily alongside our kids. And we want to make sure that we're feeding our kids regularly too throughout the course of a holiday. And so if you're planning a meal or snack for the kiddos, make that a reminder for you to also take some time to feed yourself as well. And that can really help prevent the restricting binging cycle that can happen when we don't eat enough during the course of our day. So tip number 3 here is just doing the best that you can to stay attuned to your needs and feelings in your bodies. Again, this can be really difficult and challenging because so many of us have learned to abandon our needs. A lot of us have become disassociated from our bodies because living in our body may feel too painful or too distressing. And I get that. I honestly really understand that. And that is what I believe a huge function and mechanism of an eating disorder is, that it protects us from the distress that we may be feeling in our life and in our bodies. And I think this is why for so many, eating disorder behaviors can really ramp up around holidays, or you might find yourself feeling more urges to engage in eating disorder behaviors. And oftentimes it's because it's helping you escape what may feel distressing in your life in that moment. And I want to encourage you to just attune to what may be going on versus trying to fight it or ignore it or suppress it. Our bodies are amazing, and it's truly amazing when we think about all the things that our bodies have brought us through. And really taking a pause and a moment to appreciate and have gratitude for your body and what it's helping you through. And also use that as a launching place to help you be attuned to your body and the feelings that may be coming up for you. I want to encourage you to notice what dysregulation in your body might be feeling like. Maybe you notice your body becoming more tense, or you have a more rapid heartbeat, or, you find yourself clenching your body a little bit. What does that feel like when you are starting to feel distressed or dysregulated? And instead of trying to disassociate from that, what would it feel like to let that stress move through your body and give yourself space to process what is coming up for you, and, to help your body kind of move through whatever distressing things may be coming up for you today. And I know this can be hard and easier said than done. And, that requires building some different tools or just having some mechanisms in place. I know for me, some things that have been helpful to just attuning to my body and helping myself move through stress and dysregulation is breath work, or removing myself from a situation entirely. So sometimes when I find myself becoming dysregulated by all the noise and the different smells and the different conversations that are happening in a room when it's, a holiday or whatever it is, when I find myself starting to feel that distress in my body, removing myself from a situation momentarily can be really helpful. So sometimes that looks like bundling up and going outside for 5-10 minutes, taking some deep breaths, just kind of grounding myself a little bit, paying attention to my body and letting that stress kind of move through. I think so many of us have not learned these skills, myself included. This has been something that I've been learning just recently over the past couple years. And it really just gives me more compassion for myself and for so many of us who never learned to process those emotions in our bodies and learn to suppress them or try to escape them, again, via the eating disorder often. And so this may feel new to you, but I just want to encourage you, instead of fighting those things or trying to suppress it, to actually help your body move through whatever stress may be coming up for you. Because let's be real, on holidays and on family gatherings, it's not uncommon that those things are going to come up for us. And I just want to encourage you to create some space for yourself, to recognize what that feels like. What does dysregulation feel like in my body? And how can I help myself move through these things when it is coming up? And tip number 4 here is is just helping yourself as you're navigating some triggering diet talk. Ooh, this is a hard one. And again, I feel like we could spend a whole episode on just navigating diet talk and setting boundaries with family and friends and random people who decide to comment on our food or our bodies. And it can be so triggering to get together with family members and the first thing that they say is, a comment about your body or who are commenting about what you eat or, all those things can come up and it's just so frustrating and very triggering. And I know that this can be really upsetting and distressing for a lot of you. And so, I know there's not a simple solution for this. And it really can depend on the person in your life who's making these comments and in terms of how you approach it. I just want to encourage you to think about what would help you feel safe. And I think so many of us have learned, again, to abandon our needs and abandon what we need to feel safe in order to appease other people. And this comes back to understanding our family of origin and the interactions that we had with our primary caregivers growing up. A lot of us internalize this belief that our needs don't matter and that we have to abandon what we need in order to appease other people and to feel safe with somebody else. And so this idea and this practice of boundary setting can feel really foreign and uncomfortable, especially if you are learning how to do this for yourself. And, it might feel like I'm going to offend someone or I might feel rejected if I set boundaries with other people. I totally get those fears. And I also just want to encourage you to think about what you need and what is important to helping you feel safe. Feeling safe in your body is so important. And I know when you get those triggering comments from other people, it can set the alarms off in your head and just make you feel like I'm not safe in my body. And that can really be a trigger for just engaging in those eating disorder behaviors that are now popping up as a survival mechanism. Well, hey, if you don't feel safe in your body, let's escape from your body. And so I want you to think about what would help you feel safe. And sometimes this looks like changing a subject, right? If you're feeling a little more spicy and you feel like you have more capacity to shut down some body shaming or, provide some education, definitely do what you feel like is within your capacity. But sometimes we don't have capacity in those moments, or we may feel helpless in those moments, and we may not feel like we have energy to dialogue with the people in our lives who are making these comments. So a couple of phrases that I keep in my back pocket that I like to say when these conversations come up, whether someone's making a comment about you or your body or their bodies. One thing I like to say and just remind the people in my lives is that, we are so much more than our bodies. And let's enjoy this meal together. We don't have to have a conversation that's centering around our body sizes. There's so many other interesting things that I can talk about. And by the way, have you heard about and change the subject? That's always one way to pivot the conversation. Another thing that I like to say, just to kind of make light of some of this, phrases and conversations that can happen around food in particular. Like if someone's saying, oh, I don't know if I should be eating that, or do you really need all that food on your plate, or whatever it might look like, something more along the lines of did someone call the food police? Is the food police here? Because I don't think any of us asked them to show up, something humorous, but really trying to kind of make a point, but also make light of what's happening in the moment. And that might be hard. And again, every situation is so individual, but I just want to encourage you ultimately to think about, what do you need to do? What do you need to say? Are there some conversations that might need to happen before you go into certain, meals or experiences with different family members? And ultimately, creating boundaries around food and your body is important to keeping you safe and to keeping your family safe, especially our kiddos who may be exposed to this. And it's okay to put those boundaries in place with other people and saying, I don't want to have this conversation right now, or I'm really trying my best to have a positive relationship with food, my body. And when I hear these type of comments, it really can deter me from having that experience. So is it okay if we change the conversation, or can we talk about something else? I think it may feel really foreign to say these things to people, but understanding the importance of it and keeping us safe, especially as we navigate these situations. I wish that we could snap our fingers and make diet talk just disappear. But unfortunately, so many of our family members are so entrenched in it that it's likely to come up. So, talking through some things that feel genuine to you. This might also look like asking a trusted person in your life to help support you if these conversations are coming up too. Because sometimes in the moment, we might feel like we don't have the words, or we might feel helpless. And so if we can call on someone else to help us, if they see us in those moments or those conversations, that can feel supportive too. So last point here, as we kind of wrap up this conversation today, is just planning for extra support as you move through these holidays. So, if you know that, okay, going into this meal or going into this occasion with this family member is going to feel really triggering, or, I'm likely going to feel really overwhelmed after we leave that family occasion, whatever that looks like, just kind of like forecasting what you might need to help yourself kind of unwind and decompress from whatever came up for you. So that might look like, planning some downtime for yourself after a certain occasion or family meal or holiday gathering, if possible. Again, I think so many of us are used to just go all the time, or attending to the needs of other people, that we forget about ourselves and we neglect to do things that we actually need to help ourselves. And it's not just in the moment of the Thanksgiving dinner or the family meal that you're having, but also after, like just acknowledging that, man, there's probably a lot that's going to come up for me today, just based on what I know about myself, based on my history, based on what family meals or family gatherings used to look like in my past. I need to give myself some space and some margin to decompress, to unwind, to attend to myself, to care for myself. And I think when we can do something like that for ourselves, it feels like a very loving way of caring for ourselves, which a lot of us didn't experience growing up. So whatever that looks like for you, that might mean, phoning a friend if you're more of an external processor and you need to just kind of like talk about some things that came up for you. Who can you talk to after all these family or holiday experiences have kind of come to an end? What feels good to help you kind of come back to your body or feel safe in your body? Maybe it's unwinding at the end of the night, watching a movie, or, taking a long shower, whatever it is that can help you just feel more relaxed and more regulated, right? We talked about the dysregulation that can come up during these holiday gatherings, but also just accounting for and knowing that you probably will feel dysregulated afterwards too. And sometimes we tend to resort to maladaptive coping mechanisms after engaging with family members or having these triggering conversations. And I just want you to think ahead of time, what are some things that you can do that can potentially support yourself in decompressing and re-regulating your body that will feel more loving and gentle and kind to yourself. And this is where I do want to put in a little plug here for our Lift the Shame community and our support group. We are still meeting and going strong over the holiday season. So if you are a mama who is just healing your relationship with food and your body and needing more support around this tricky time of year, I just want to invite you into our community, and we'll make sure that I put a link into the show notes for our group where you can come and sign up. So I hope this is helpful for you. I know I know these holidays can really bring up a lot, and I just want you to know that you're not alone. Whatever is coming up for you, please know that you are important. You matter. Your needs matter. You don't have to abandon yourself like you may have done in years past in order to appease other people. And I hope that in this day, in this holiday season, that you can find some glimpses of peace and joy around food, around your body, and also in the memories that you're making with your family. I think a lot of this comes down to rewriting the script and doing things differently. Like so many of us grew up with so much tension and turmoil around holiday seasons, and knowing that there's parts of you that are still holding on to those things and needs to heal through those things. And also knowing, on the other hand, that you have an opportunity to do things differently as well. And that includes for your family, but also for you, like learning to care for yourself and move through these tricky times in a more loving and gentle way. And just knowing like you are doing the best that you can, and you also don't have to do this alone. So I would love to hear from you. If you have any thoughts, if you need some more encouragement or feedback, or you have questions about anything that we chatted about today, please feel free to connect with me. You can email me at hello@crystalcargis.com, or you can connect with me on Instagram at crystalcargis. I'll be there too. And I am just sending you and your family so much love on this Thanksgiving and in this holiday season. And I am just so incredibly grateful for this community. It is such a joy to just come alongside you and have these conversations. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. And I can't wait to reconnect next week. I know we took a little bit of a pause from our reparenting series, so we will be resuming that next week. So I hope you'll come back and join me for that. All right. Happy Thanksgiving, my friend. We will talk to you next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Lift the Shame podcast. For more tips and guidance on your motherhood journey, come connect with me on Instagram at Crystal Cargis. Until next week, Mama, I'll be cheering you on. Bye for now.